Long ago, beneath the soft desert stars, there lay a great city, Susa, the shining capital of the Persian Empire. Its walls rose like a dream from the sand, kissed by moonlight and wrapped in stillness. Beyond its gates, the world bustled. But within, time seemed to move like a slow breeze, gentle and quiet. In this city, on a quiet street away from the grand palaces, lived a kind man named Mordecai and his cousin, Hadassah, a name whispered sweetly in Hebrew, like the scent of blooming matter. But the world would come to know her by another name. Esther. A name like silk in the wind. She was an orphan, yet there was no shadow in her gaze. Raised in love, surrounded by wisdom and warmth, Esther grew like a flower in early spring, quietly, gracefully. She was soft-spoken and thoughtful, often lingering by the window at dusk, watching the sky change color. Her hands were gentle. Her heart was kind. By day, she would help Mordecai tend to small tasks, carrying baskets, offering bread to the poor, listening to his quiet teachings. And by night, she would sit beside him as he whispered the stories of their people, of Abraham beneath the stars, of Moses by the sea, of David with his harp. Her world was small but full of wonder. The rustle of leaves in the wind. The scent of warm bread. The prayers that drifted into the dark like doves into the sky. One day, a great murmur spread through the city. Messengers on swift horses galloped through the gates. Scrolls were nailed to walls. Trumpets sounded. The king, Xerxes, ruler of 127 provinces, was seeking a new queen. The palace, with its marble pillars and golden ceilings, would soon open its doors to maidens from every corner of the land. It was not a place Esther had ever imagined for herself. She did not chase dreams of royal robes or diamond crowns. She dreamed only of peace, of the warmth of home, of a life lived quietly, close to God, close to kindness. But fate, like the wind, does not always move in the direction we expect. Mordecai watched her with tender eyes. "You have been chosen," he said gently. "Do not fear. Walk in the way of truth, and you will not walk alone." And so Esther, humble and still, stepped into the unknown. She was taken, along with many others, to the palace, its vast halls echoing with footsteps, its air perfumed with rare oils and spices. The women were given fine silks, golden combs, and long months of preparation. Yet Esther remained herself. She spoke little but listened well. She moved with care, never rushing, never seeking favor. And still, she was noticed. The keeper of the women, a man named Haggai, saw in a light that did not need jewels to shine. He offered her kindness and quiet guidance. And she, in turn, offered grace. At last, the day came when she would be brought before the king. She asked for nothing. No jewels, no perfumes, no extravagant robes. She walked in wearing a simple gown, her hair like ink spilling down her back, her eyes deep and calm like pools untouched by wind. The great King Xerxes lifted his gaze, and in her, he saw not just beauty, but peace. He placed the royal crown upon her head, and Esther became queen. Yet even as golden curtains closed around her, she did not forget. She did not forget the prayers whispered at dusk. The stories told by candlelight. The name her people called her, Hadassah. The quiet strength that bloomed in her soul. Each night, as the palace hushed and servants extinguished the lamps, Esther would step onto her balcony and gaze at the stars. She would close her eyes and breathe deeply, remembering the scent of myrtle, the sound of Mordecai's voice, the feeling of the wind through open windows. And so the story began. Not with trumpets or triumph, but with stillness. With one girl, quiet and faithful, wrapped in moonlight, breathing softly beneath the stars. The days in the palace passed like clouds across a calm sky, slow and quiet, brushed with light. Golden sun spilled through arched windows, bathing the silken halls in warmth. Servants moved with hushed soft footsteps, and music, faint like a lullaby, drifted through the corridors. Esther, though now queen, walked with the same still grace she had always known. She spoke kindly to the women in her chambers, listened more than she talked, and never once raised her voice. The palace adored her not for her power, but for her peace. Yet she held a secret close to her heart. No one in the court knew she was a Jew. Mordecai, wise and watchful, had warned her, "Do not speak of your people. Not yet. Wait, and listen." And so she waited. And she listened. Each morning, she would rise before the sun, when the world was still grey and the air carried the cool of night. She would open her windows to the garden below, where roses bloomed and doves cooed among the olive branches. There, in the quiet, she would pray, not with words, but with stillness, with breath, with longing. Far beyond the palace walls, Mordecai sat each day at the king's gate. He came not as a man of wealth, but as a quiet presence. Watching, waiting, hoping that Esther, his daughter in heart if not in blood, was safe. He missed her. Missed her laughter, soft like wind chimes. Missed the glow of candlelight on her face as she listened to stories of old. But he knew her place was now within the walls of the palace, beneath the weight of a crown. One evening, as stars began to soar the sky, a shadow passed over the city. Two guards of the king, angry and bitter, plotted in whispers. Their words were sharp and dangerous, they would take the king's life. But Mordecai, always listening, heard. He told Esther in secret, and Esther, with care, told the king in Mordecai's name. The plot was stopped. The king was saved. And though the moment passed, and the scrolls of the palace moved on, the name of Mordecai was written quietly in the royal record. It seemed a small thing, a passing moment. But in the weave of fate, even a whisper can shift the course of kings. Time passed, and the world turned gently on. But then came a name that would change everything. Haman. He rose like a storm, silent at first, clever, proud, and powerful. The king raised him high, placing him above all the princes, draping him in silk and praise. At the city gates, all bowed low before him. All but one. Mordecai. Not out of defiance. Not out of pride. But because he bowed only to God. Haman saw. And in his heart, anger began to burn, a slow, cruel fire. He could not be content with punishing one man. No. He would stretch his hatred wide, like a shadow over the land. If Mordecai is a Jew, he said, then let all the Jews be destroyed. He whispered poison into the king's ear. There is a people, he said softly, scattered through your kingdom. They keep to themselves. They follow other laws. They do not belong. The king, trusting, removed his ring, the seal of power, and gave it to Haman. And so, with ink and wax and cruel delight, Haman sealed a decree, on the 13th day of the 12th month, all Jews, young and old, children and women, were to be destroyed. Scrolls were sent to every corner of the kingdom. The sound of galloping horses echoed across mountains and rivers, carrying the message of doom. And the city of Susa fell into silence. Mordecai, when he heard, tore his robe and put on sackcloth. He walked through the city weeping, ashes upon his head. And at the king's gate, he stopped, crying out with a voice that shook the ground. Esther, safe within her walls, heard of his sorrow. She sent servants to bring him clean clothes, to comfort him, but he refused them. Instead, he sent her a message, written in shaking hands. Do not think you are safe because you are in the palace. If you remain silent, help will rise for us from another place, but you and your house will fall. And who knows, whether you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. Esther read the words again and again. For such a time as this. Her heart was still. Her hands trembled. She had lived her life in silence, in prayer, in quiet trust. Now, the time had come to speak. But to go before the king without being called was forbidden. The law was clear: unless he held out his golden scepter, she would die. Esther stood at her window, looking out across the palace gardens, the sky bruised with dusk. She did not cry. Instead, she sent one final message to Mordecai. Gather the people. Fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days and nights. I and my servants will do the same. And then I will go to the king, though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish. And so began the 3 days of stillness. No music in the halls. No feast in the courts. Just silence. Prayer. Waiting. And in that hush, Esther prepared her heart, not with fear, but with faith. The third morning dawned quiet and soft, cloaked in a sky of pale gold. A hush still rested over the palace of Susa, as if even the wind waited. In the queen's chamber, Esther rose from the floor where she had knelt in prayer. 3 days without food. 3 nights without sleep. But her eyes held no fear. Only resolve. Only grace. Her handmaidens moved silently around her, dressing her not in the shimmering glory of royalty, but in a robe of simple majesty. The color of pearl. Flowing like water. No jewels. No crown. Just a quiet dignity that shone brighter than gold. The marble halls seemed to echo with every step she took. Her sandals whispered against the floor. Her heartbeat was steady. She walked past guards, who bowed low but asked no questions. Past pillars tall as trees. Past drapes that fluttered like wings. Until she reached the great court, the inner place where none could enter unbidden. Not even the queen. And there, ahead of her, sat the king. Xerxes, ruler of Persia, draped in royal robes, his eyes set upon scrolls and courtiers. Gold glinted on his fingers, and a crown shimmered atop his head. Around him, nobles stood in waiting, silent and alert. Esther paused at the threshold. She breathed in slowly, once, twice. The air was cool and fragrant with cedar. Then she stepped forward. A single figure in the stillness. Time seemed to hold its breath. Every gaze turned. Every whisper died. Every servant froze. Would the king raise his hand in anger? Would he turn away? Would her story end here, before it began? But the king looked up. And when his eyes found Esther, something softened in him. He did not see a threat. He did not see defiance. He saw a woman of calm strength. A queen of grace. A presence that soothed. Slowly, his hand moved. And in it, he lifted the golden scepter. The light caught it like dawn on still water. And Esther stepped forward, touching its tip. A breath of relief passed through the court, like a wind after a long silence. "My queen," said Xerxes, his voice warm. "What is it you seek? Even to half of my kingdom, it shall be yours." But Esther, in her wisdom, did not rush. She knew the time was not yet. With a smile like morning light, she bowed gently and said, "If it pleases the king, let the king and Haman come this day to a banquet I have prepared." The king, pleased, agreed. And Haman, rising with a proud gleam in his eye, followed. That evening, the table was set beneath her arches and flickering lamps. Sweet fruits glistened. Spices scented the air. The music was soft, like water over stone. Esther poured wine for her guests with calm hands. Her voice was gentle. Her laughter light. And again, the king asked, "What is your request, Esther?" "It shall be given to you, even to half my kingdom." But Esther, with grace, answered only, "If it pleases the king, come again tomorrow to another banquet. Then I will make my request." And so, the seeds were planted. Patience. Prayer. Timing. All moving like stars across a silent sky. Haman left the palace that night full of pride. The queen herself had invited him to dine. Twice. He walked with shoulders tall, chest high. But at the gate, he saw Mordecai. And Mordecai did not bow. Again. Haman's pride turned to rage. That night, at home, he spoke to his wife and friends, his voice laced with fury. All this means nothing to me while that man still sits at the gate. And they said, build a gallows. Tall as a tree. 50 cubits high. And ask the king to hang Mordecai on it. And Haman smiled. And the gallows were built. But that night, while the city slept and Haman dreamed of vengeance, something stirred in the king. He could not sleep. Servants were called to read from the royal records, the scrolls of what had been done. And they read of a man who once uncovered a plot, who saved the king's life. A man named Mordecai. The king sat upright. What honor has been given to this man? None, they replied. And the king nodded, deep in thought. As dawn approached, and the city yawned into morning, Haman entered the court, ready to speak of gallows and punishment. But before he could speak, the king greeted him. What should be done, asked Xerxes, for the man the king wishes to honor? Haman, full of pride, thought, who else could the king mean but me? And so he said, let him wear the king's robe. Let him ride the king's horse. Let a noble prince lead him through the city, crying, this is what is done for the man the king delights to honor. The king smiled. Then do all you have said, for Mordecai the Jew. And Haman's face turned pale. That day, he led Mordecai through the city, his own voice announcing honor, while his heart boiled with shame. And when he returned home, his wife said quietly, if Mordecai is of the Jews, you will not prevail. And the wind began to shift. That evening, Esther's second banquet awaited. Candles glowed like small suns along the banquet table, their flames gentle, steady. In the quiet hush of the evening, the palace once again bathed in golden light, the perfume of roses, and the lull of distant music. All was calm. Esther stood waiting. Her hands were folded gently before her. Her face serene. Her heart strong. The room was prepared with care, fine linens, silver cups, platters of figs and honey, bowls of pomegranate seeds, and warm bread dusted with cinnamon. Everything glowed in the softest way, like a memory unfolding slowly. King Xerxes entered first, robes flowing, eyes warm with affection. And then came Haman, proud still, but beneath his pride, a flicker of worry stirred. He smiled, but his steps were slower. They took their places. Esther, poised and still, served them herself, as she had the night before. Her presence soothed the room, and even the king, ruler of a vast empire, seemed gentled by her grace. As the meal drew to its quiet end, the king turned to her once more. Queen Esther, he said, his voice like velvet, what is your request? It shall be granted, even up to half my kingdom. The room fell silent. Only the soft rustle of robes. The faint clink of goblets. The hush of time itself. Esther rose, slow as moonlight. She met the king's gaze, steady, warm, unwavering. With a voice quiet and pure, she spoke. If I have found favor in your sight, O king, and if it pleases you, grant me my life, and the life of my people. For we have been sold to be destroyed, to be killed, to be wiped away. The king's brow furrowed. His breath caught. Who would do such a thing? He asked, eyes darkening. Esther turned. Her gaze rested on Haman, who now sat frozen, his lips parted, his hands trembling ever so slightly. She said calmly, a foe. An enemy. This wicked Haman. And the silence cracked like ice beneath weight. The king stood. His face burned with fury, not loud, not storming, just powerful, still, and deadly. He left the room in silence, stepping into the garden, needing air, needing space, needing to think. And Haman turned to Esther. No longer proud. No longer bold. Just desperate. He fell before her, pleading, grasping the hem of her robe, his words tumbling like stones. But in that moment, the king returned. And he saw Haman, collapsed at the queen's feet. And rage, quiet and hot, filled the room like fire behind glass. The guards stepped forward. One of them, Abona, spoke softly. A gallows, 50 cubits high, stands by Haman's house. He built it for Mordecai, the one who saved the king. And the king, I steady, gave the order, hang him upon it. And so it was. The enemy fell. And peace returned to the room like the tide coming home. But the danger had not yet passed. Though Haman was gone, his decree remained, sealed with the king's ring, sent to all provinces. It could not be revoked. The day of destruction still loomed. The 13th day of the 12th month. Esther wept before the king once more. She fell to her knees, her tears soft as rain, her voice trembling only with sorrow. If it pleases the king, she whispered, and if I have found favor, let another decree be written, to save my people. And again, the king extended the golden scepter. Rise, my queen, he said. What you request shall be done. He gave his ring to Mordecai, Esther's cousin, now known, now honored. And together, they wrote a new decree. It did not cancel the first, for no law could be undone. But it gave the Jews power to protect themselves. To gather. To defend. To live. Messengers rode out swiftly once more, horses thundering across desert and mountain, scrolls held high. And wherever the letters arrived, hope awakened. There was still a storm ahead. But now, there was also a shield. A promise. A chance. And the people rejoiced. In every town, every village, every province, from the rivers of India to the gardens of Kush, light returned to the faces of the children of Israel. They fasted, and then they feasted. They mourned, and then they danced. And all the while, Queen Esther watched. She did not boast. She did not demand. She simply smiled, held close by Mordecai, her people, and the memory of those silent nights spent in prayer. When the appointed day came, the Jews were ready. And those who sought their harm were stopped. Across the kingdom, peace returned. And Mordecai was raised to honor, robes of blue and white, a crown of gold upon his head. He walked through Susa with dignity, beloved by the people. And Esther remained in the palace. A queen still. But more than that, a protector. A mother to a people. A woman whose courage bloomed from silence, whose strength rose from stillness. That day, they named a festival. Purim. A day to remember not just survival, but deliverance. Not just the fall of an enemy, but the rise of hope. And every year since, in candlelit homes, across generations and oceans, the story is told again. Of a girl who became queen. Of a woman who stood when the world trembled. Of Esther, whose voice turned fear into faith. And somewhere beyond time, in the hush of heaven, her story continues, whispered like lullabies, wrapped in prayer, eternal as the stars. The skies over Persia were soft with morning light. Gentle clouds moved like drifting sailboats, slow and unhurried. In the streets of Susa, the air was filled with laughter, the kind that rings softly, not loud or wild, but deep with peace. The kind that only comes after sorrow has passed. Candles were lit in homes, their golden flames flickering like the light of new beginnings. The people gathered, dressed in simple robes and bright colors. Children giggled, older ones sang quiet songs, and mothers passed down baskets of fruit, honey, and sweet cakes. Every table seemed blessed. Every face softened with rest. The enemies were gone. The decree had been answered. The people were safe. And so, they named it Purim. Not after power. Not after a king. Not even after victory. But after lots, for Haman had cast lots to decide their fate, and God had turned the wheel. What was meant for their end became their beginning. What was meant for sorrow became joy. And each year, as the month of Adar returns, so too does the memory. The story of Esther is told in whispers and in songs, in candlelight and quiet corners. They tell it not just to remember the danger, but to remember the deliverance. Not to celebrate a throne, but to honor the courage that stood before it. In the palace, Queen Esther still moved quietly through her days. She wore her crown only when needed. She spent her time with the people, among the gardens, in the courts, in the rooms where the young girls were raised. She taught them not how to charm or impress, but how to listen. How to be still. How to pray when no one sees. And when the festival came each year, Esther would wear white and sit among the children. She would hand them sweets, kiss their foreheads, and whisper, "Remember, little one, God is near. Even when all seems lost, even when the world grows dark, He is near." The children would listen with wide, wondering eyes. They didn't understand everything, but they remembered her voice. Soft and low, like a lullaby in the dark. Mordecai, now second only to the king, remained a servant in spirit. He used his power not for wealth, not for glory, but for good. He wrote letters of peace to every province, offering guidance, wisdom, and calm. He never stopped walking near the gates. Never stopped watching the people. Never stopped listening. And though Esther was queen of Persia, she never ceased to be her daughter, the girl who once sat by candlelight, listening to stories of David and Moses. Who wept in prayer. Who waited 3 days in silence before changing the course of history. There is a quiet strength in her story. No swords. No armies. Just courage wrapped in robes of silence. Just one woman who chose to speak at the right time. And because of her, a people lived. Because of her, joy returned. Because of her, we remember. Dear listener, as you rest now in your own quiet place, far from the palaces of Persia, far from the noise of the day, let Esther's story wrap around you like a soft blanket. Let it remind you of something very simple, but very true. You are not alone. Even if you feel forgotten. Even if you are waiting. Even if your prayers seem unanswered. You are not alone. Just like Esther. You are known. You are chosen. You are loved by a God who sees every moment, even the ones that seem small. He is not far away. He is closer than breath. He is present in this very moment. In the slowing of your heart. In the quiet of your room. In the hush between your thoughts. Let yourself remember now. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. The same hand that guided Esther through the shadows is the hand that holds you now. The same whisper that gave her courage can speak peace into your soul. You do not need to perform. You do not need to prove anything. You do not need to be perfect. You only need to rest. Rest in His love. Rest in His nearness. Rest in the truth that even when you cannot feel Him, He is here. Watching. Guiding. Loving. So breathe deeply now. Let the quiet settle in your chest like warm light. Let the gentle rhythm of your breath remind you. You are safe. You are held. You are part of a greater story. And even when you don't know how it ends, God does. Just like with Esther. Just like with every soul He loves. One day, you look back, just as she did. You'll see the places He carried you. The moments when He protected you, even without your knowing. The doors He opened. The people He placed in your path. The peace He gave when nothing else made sense. And in that moment, you know, He was there all along. Let this story drift with you into sleep. Let your heart rest in its quiet truth. Esther's courage. Mordecai's wisdom. the people's deliverance, and God's invisible, ever-present hand. It's all for you too. So sleep now, deeply and peacefully. You are loved. You are safe. You are not alone. God is near. Always.